Okay. So most people are here. Great.
Mike?
Hello, Bhante. How you
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, I'm doing good. How about you?
Great. Okay. Well, pretty busy over here, but we're keeping ahead of all the disasters, I guess.
Okay, so what's going on with the app? Are you on Zoom with app or just on the?
It's it doesn't matter, I think. The issue is when we start the meeting, it's already too late to change settings for the meeting if you're in it. So if we join the meeting a few minutes early and then attempt to say set it up to stream something to YouTube or to add breakout rooms or what have you, we can't do that in that meeting. So I've already in advance set up the recording and the breakout rooms. So those features are enabled here. But
Okay,
we have
so
to,
can you
yeah,
tell me how does the breakout room work here?
yeah. So basically, I have a button over here on my panel that just says breakout rooms, and I click on it and allows me to manually or automatically create a room and then fill it with participants. In this case, we're going to want Dalot and Delon, and we want where is Selah? Selah is going to be. I think I'll make Selah a co-host actually, so she can hop in and out of the break room.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start the puja then. Now,
Mhm.
I think Naomi's camera is upside down, I guess. Okay, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's time to give you five precepts. Say Namo Tassa three times to observe five precepts.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatyam dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Anati patha viramani sikha padang samadhyami.
Panatipata viramani sikhapadam samadhyam.
Adinna dana viramani sikha padang samadhyami.
Dinadana viramani sikhapadam samadhyam.
Kamisu michachara viramani sikha padang samadhyami.
Kame samichachara viramani sikhapadam samadhyam.
Musavada viramani sikha padang samadhyami.
Musavada viramani sikhapadam samadhyam.
Suramire majjapama dattana viramani sikha padang samadhyami.
Suramire majjapamadatthana viramani sikhapadam samadhyam.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm just wondering about Sela. Is Sela there? Because Sela is a teacher. It's good to be on, on the screen for the puja too.
Yeah, I
Sela,
don't see.
where is Sela? Sir?
I can go check
Is
if
she
you
is
want.
she on a different gadget somewhere in house?
Yeah, she's. I can go and ask her if you want.
Yeah, please, if it is possible. In the meantime. Okay, so we'll start the puja in the meantime. So now we're going to offer all the offerings we place in front of the Buddha statue, especially in your houses. Before you taking your seats, you offer flowers, candles, incense sticks, water, medicinal drinks to the Buddha. We're going to be contemplating on the Buddha's great qualities by reciting stanzas together. So let's recite stanzas together to offer all these offerings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Homage to the Buddha 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahatu samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vichacharana sampanno sugatu lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sattha manussanang buddho bhagavati. Veneration to Buddha, veneration to the Dhamma. Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sandittiko akaliko ehi passiko openaiko pachattang veditambu vinyuhiti. Veneration to the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho Nyayapatipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho Samichi patipanno bhagavatu savaka sangho Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atte purisa pungala esa bhagavatu savaka sangho ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyakitang lukassati. Offering candles. Ganasarappaditena deepena tamadang sina Tilokadipang sambundang pujayami tamudang. Offering incense. Gandha sambhara yuttena dhupena hang sugandhina pujaye pujaniyantang puja bhajane muttamang. Offering flowers. Vanne gandhe gunopetang etang kusuma santating Pujayami munindasya siripada saruruhe Pujimi buddhang kusumena nina Punyena metena chahotu mankhang Puppang milayati yatha idammi Kayo tadayati vinasa bhavang. Offering water, medicinal drinks. Adivase tuno bhante paniyang parikampitam anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang adivase tuno bhante gilana pachayang imang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang adivase tuno bhante besajjang parikampitang anukampang upadaya patiganhatu muttamang. Veneration of all the pagodas of the Buddha's relics and the Bodhi tree. Vandami chetiyang sabbang sabbatani supatitthitang saririka dhatu mahabodhing buddharupang sakalang sada yasya mule nisinnova sabbari vichayang akha patu sabbanyutang tassa vandetang bodhipadapang. Apologizing from the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha for any mistakes we done unintentionally. Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami bhante bhuri panya tathagata Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami dhamma sandittika akalika Kayena vacha chittena pamadena maya katang achayang kamami sangha supatipanna anuntara. Finally, we have this aspiration. May I be with the wise individuals as long as I attain the Nibbana. Imina punya kammena mami bala samagamu Satan samagamu yava nibbana patantiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, it's time to get ready for the meditation now. But before that, we're going to, after that, we're going to share good karmas with the departed individuals and the deities. So please keep to your postures. You're gonna keep your back straight. Don't lean onto the, backrest parts of your seats, chairs. Put your right palm on the left palm, and then close your eyes, please. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always meet with success. May I also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Now be taking the loving kindness practice to our uh, beloved parents and others. May my parents be well, happy, and peaceful. May my teachers, relatives, friends, all indifferent persons, all living beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they always meet with success. May they also have patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. So let's contemplate on these aspects of loving kindness meditation for a few minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now we're going to share all the good karmas for the departed relatives and the deities. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idammi nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Ittavata cha ammihi sambetang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti sindhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambetang punya sampadang. Sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambetang punya sampadang. Sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumodinva chirang rakkhantu lokasasanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mang paranti. Okay, now it's time for you to worship monks. So, Avīci, would you mind starting that?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Silavantam gunavantam punyakhetam anuttaram dullabena mayaladam buddha puttam namamaham. Silavantam gunavantam punyakhetam anuttaram dullabena mayaladam buddha puttam namamaham. Silavantam gunavantam punyakhetam anuttaram dullabena mayaladam buddha puttam namamaham.
Okay, it's time to worship, venerate your parents. Please approach your parents. We're going to be starting respecting your mom and then dad. Dase maase ure katva pose si buddhi karanang ayudighang vassa satang matupadang namamahang. Dase maasayak duk vinda ma hedu amme lekiri kar poa ma dedi kar amme nivase budun yai budu himi desu amme oba payuga vandimi ma adara amme. Father, Buddhikaru alinginva chumbitva piya puttakang raja majjang supatintang pitupadang namamahang. Neti beri kamak mata nodanina niya yeni dukun karadara medin ma hedudaya bini hodadaruweku wen matadun owa mini oba payuga vandimi ma adara piyani. Okay, please get back to your seats. Where is our teacher for junior school? Huh? Sela? Oh, you there?
Hi.
We would like to see you. Okay. How about the others? They are still venerating their parents, huh? Ovini, Seth.
Guest. I want to also make Sela a co-host. Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't done Mike, so once we've done the puja. Are you still figuring out that?
It doesn't seem to have that option.
Okay.
I'll figure it out later.
Okay, let's sing the Dhamma school song now. Please rise and then, you don't need to put your palms together, just sing like an anthem. Thank you. Mike, are you gonna give some co-hosting, whatever thing to Sela? I don't know how it works. We can hear you, Mike.
Yeah, so apparently that's another setting that needs to be enabled before the meeting starts. I don't think it's super important right now, as long as I get Sela and De La Tendelon in their own breakout room, it should be fine. I've enabled the breakout room. So what should happen when I press this button is that the three of you will go into like a separate sort of compartmentalized meeting.
Yeah, give me a second. I think Maya is also going to be in that class. So they're going to be three students for the junior class. Yeah.
All right, I can add them too.
Lata
and Maya. There we go. Okay, so then we have all of you will go into the other smaller meeting that's just for you guys, and you'll have your lesson that Sela will lead. And then when that's done, I will remove that room, and at the very end of the day, you will hop back in here with the rest of us. So that should be how it works. I just wanted to make you co-host, Sela, because it thinks that you can move yourself back and forth if you wanted to between the two, but I don't think we'll really need that, so it should be okay. And yeah, otherwise, I think we're good to go. Are there any other issues to start?
Yeah, Mike, can Sela share her screen when she's there? She wants to show some pictures and stuff.
You should be able to, according to the current settings that I have checked, as far as I understand. I'm not a Zoom master. I don't use this for work or anything.
Mike, but I'm just wondering, have you already given the co-hosting thing to Sela?
No, you can't do that unless it's been set up in advance of the meeting. Like most Zoom settings can't be changed during the meeting. So that's something that we'll have to do for next time. Sela, you should be able to share your screen. According to the settings that I have that I see here, people can share, but only one person can share at a time. So while you're in your meeting, I think you should be able to share what's going on in there. It should be fine. If you have trouble with that, then I will mess with the settings if I can. I can also try. I'm gonna check this box and say multiple people can share simultaneously. So there's no who can share. It says all participants can share. So this looks like it should be fine. You shouldn't have any trouble. Yeah, otherwise I think it should be okay. You won't be able to hop back and forth though. But I think that's no problem, because when at the end of the lesson today, when I dissolve the break room, you should come back in with the rest of us.
Just a quick question. I'm pretty sure that I end at 3:30.
Yep.
So do you guys end?
You should be able to read it for the end if you it shouldn't be an issue, I think. Right?
Yeah, Mike, the thing is that we plan to have that for only 1 hour, because they are small kids. So what is the way that they can, the students can come back to recite the Chattamanuga at around like 3:55?
I think you should just be able to join the meeting like you did at the beginning today. You just go follow the link and you should just come back in. Yeah, it shouldn't.
The meeting ID and password, right?
Yeah, I think it should still work. Yeah.
So once we're done in our breakout room,
you can just leave if you want. Yeah, if you're done, you could just leave and then join back at the end. That's fine too. Yeah, you don't have to leave your camera running the whole time. That would be kind of silly.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Any
So I guess that's
from
what we're gonna do.
New students? Maya is joining for the first time, I guess, after our, in-person Dhamma school.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I've met you before, Maya. Hello. Hi. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, you met her many times, I guess, here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, here.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's been so long since I've actually been out of the house and seen people in person. It's, it's like a whole other world ago.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. Okay. Well,
okay, Mike. Okay, Sela. So please continue your classes.
Yeah.
And then,
okay. Yeah. I'm going to hit open all rooms. That should send you guys into a breakout room. If it doesn't, we have a problem. So I guess I will see you at the end. and unassigned. That should send you. Oh, I see some people have changed. I want you guys in room 1. That's good. And I still see some people shifting around. Oh, I guess it's loading people into the room. It's kind of slow. Okay, all right. It looks like I see the right people though. Yeah, I think except for Lata Auntie and Maya, who are still in here. Oh, yeah, for some reason. Maybe it's just a loading issue. That's odd. Okay, Lata Auntie's not there. Maya, you can still hear me, yeah? Oh, she's gone. Okay, well, I guess it worked then. It's just slow to load everybody. I suppose it takes a little while. But yeah, I see check marks next to all of them. I see all of you guys in here. This all looks like it's working properly. Great. I will open chat. And while you're all opening and finding your place in the book, so we're on page 335 of the textbook today. All right. Page 335. I wonder if I can close this window without killing things. Yep. Okay, we're good. So while you're opening your textbooks and finding your place, how's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, you're surviving. You're staying safe and at home and all that stuff. You're keeping up with school, I guess, because everything's now back to online or remote, right?
Yeah.
You finding that more challenging? I think some people manage to save time that way.
For us, we're going back to school this week.
Okay. Yes, I did hear on, tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's hoping that it's safe and healthy and everything. But I don't think other things are opening up. Is it just schools? Okay. Well, I hope that it's all safe and healthy for you guys. So last time we talked about Niraya. We're going to talk about it again this time. And then that will be the end. Today is the end of our journey through the lower realms in the pyramid of samsara. So next session, we're going to jump right back up to the top and we're going to go up through the Deva realms and the Brahma worlds and so on. So this time, we're going to talk about the details of the Niraya worlds. We're going to talk about some different kinds of Nirayas that there are, because there isn't just one. Just like I guess there's not just one animal realm. There are different kinds of animals and one could be born as. In the same way, there are different kinds of Nirayas and different Niraya beings. So we're going to discuss some of those, not all of them, exhaustively here today. On page 335, let's see, Seth, why don't you read the first paragraph there?
Yeah, that's 3314, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There are only a few places in the canon, as distinct from the commentaries, where we find specific details about Niraya. The most systematic description is in two adjacent suttas of the Majjhima Nikaya, the Balapandita, and the Devadutta Suttas. We have already seen how a being destined for Niraya is questioned by King Yama. In the conclusion of his inquiry, King Yama is silent and the unfortunate person is seized by Niryapalas. They immediately subject him to various tortures.
All right, cool. I'll read the quote here. The Niryapalas, that means the protectors of Niraya, torture him by driving a red-hot iron stake through each hand, each foot, and through his belly. They throw him down and chop him with axes and turn him upside down and chop him with adze. I don't know why it's worse to be upside down when that's how, for some reason, that's part of it. They yoke him to a chariot, make him run over blazing ground. They make him climb a mountain of burning coals. They put him in a metal cauldron, cook him and swirl it in froth. And as a result of these tortures, he suffers painful, racking, and piercing feelings. But he does not die so long as his negative karma is not exhausted. And that comes back to the question I think somebody had last week about how long, can you die as a result of these? And the answer is no, because your body is conditioned in this dreamlike state of death, like as though it's not like a material body almost, right? It is a material body, but it's driven and propelled by karma. So it's not as fragile as our regular human body, which is pretty awful. So that's pretty terrible. I think this has a lot in common with descriptions of hells or hellish realms in other cultures. I mean, this is not really new stuff, probably to most people. If you've seen any cartoons or anything, like Bugs Bunny has a few places where they have depictions of hell. I mean, with all the flames and demons and stuff, it's pretty similar. It sounds very much analogous. Okay. Let's see here. Shall we? I think we can step over some of that. All right, let's go outside of let's go to Dilika. Why don't you skip to page 336 and read the paragraph that starts with immediately outside.
Okay, yeah, sorry, just give me a second. Okay, immediately outside Eastern Gates, okay.
Yeah.
Immediately outside the eastern gate of Mahāniraya is the Niraya, the Niraya of excerment. Here dwell the Sukyamukkas, animals with sharp iron needle-like mouth parts, who bore through the sufferer's skin, flesh, and bones to feast on the marrow. They are as thick as an elephant's neck and as long as a ship. After making his way through the Niraya, the Nirayakasatta enters the Kukulnariya. I have no idea how to say that.
Kukula.
Kukula Niraya. There, the beings falls into a mass of hot coals as big as a gabled house. Very fine hot ashes rain down upon him and enter into the 9 orifices of his body, causing great suffering. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is pretty weirdly specific. So these are all, I believe these descriptions are from let's check the footnote here, 418. Yeah, so some of this stuff is from various sources. This comes from a Jataka story, this particular one. There's details like this in one of the Jataka tales. But yeah, some of these things are also in the commentaries. There's less detail, as it was mentioned earlier, in the original suttas, like the really oldest core of material. So yeah, we have some interesting creatures here. The Suchimukhas. So mukha is a mouth or a face. So suchi is a needle. So it's literally the needle faces and the needle mouths. They're like these gigantic long things they're like mosquitoes that are like like the size of a boat. And they just drill into the body and suck all the goodies out. The hot coals, you have these ashes smothering the body, but also rushing into all the 9 orifices. So an orifice is a hole. So your orifices include like your eyes, your nostrils, your mouth, and so on. And if you count them all, you should find about 9. So that's all the places where something can enter or come out of your body naturally, without like there being a wound or something. Another term that's in here we see Nirayika satta. Nirayika is like of hell, or like of or about or hell. So it's a hell being. Nirayika satta is a hell being. That's like a rough way you could translate that. So they have all these different they do a tour. You see, this is he is forced in the previous sentence. He endures a forced tour through various secondary nirayas. So he gets to see all these fun different other things. These are also there are a lot of places in especially in Asia, like in Thailand. There's one temple that's very famous for this, and they've taken these kinds of scenes from all these various Nirayas, and they've made it part of their temple. So they have all these different, you can experience this tour as a human being. And their idea is you can go through and see these various scenes of Niraya while you're still alive. And the intent of the monks of this temple is to basically scare people straight and to make them, behave themselves, to be like, this is what's waiting for you in the hereafter if you're bad. I don't think that's a good way of motivating people generally. I think it doesn't tend to work, but that's my opinion. Maybe for some people, being scared will motivate them to good behavior. But I don't think it's usually better to motivate people through inspiration than through horror. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have the Grove of the Simbali Trees. Ovindu, do you want to read the Grove of the Simbali Trees?
Sure. Starting from next, he enters.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, he enters the Simbali Vana, the Grove of Simbali Trees. These trees are 100 yojana high and bear 16-inch thorns on their bark. The thorns are described as being made of iron, very sharp, and they drink men's blood. The Niraya is forced to climb up and down the Simbali trees. This Niraya is especially associated with the act of adultery. The wrongdoers are forced to climb the painful thorny trees in order to reach their lover, or perhaps an illusory image of her waiting at the top.
Okay, great. We see here the assumption, and also even in the language here, like we see that there's the assumption that this being is a male. That's not always the case. I don't know if it's particularly relevant what the gender of a Nirayakasatta is. But here he says that the author says that this is an illusory image of the lover, but it may not be. It says her, but it may not be gender specific. Adultery, of course. I don't know if you all know that term. Adultery is if you have a husband or a wife, but you go with someone else and you cheat on your partner. That's called adultery. So this is sometimes associated with that particular misdeed. So that's a violation of one of the basic 5 precepts, which precept is that? Who can tell me which precept it is that we take that adultery violates?
Is it the misbehaving one?
Yep. What's the Pali for it? Do you remember? Because we did it at the beginning, so we should hopefully remember.
I don't remember exactly which one it is, though.
It's Game Sumittachara. So Kama is Bhante Chandima likes to talk about this one a lot because people don't understand the interpretation of the meaning of this one. It's kind of complicated. But Kama is any sense pleasure. Like it's like sense desire. So you have so Kama can mean like the impulse that we have to watch fun movies or see a beautiful sunset or do awful things like cheat on a partner or that kind of thing. So it can run a range. Kama is not necessarily evil, but it can make us do evil things. So, and that's why we don't just say the precept isn't avoiding Kama entirely. It is Game Sumittachara. So that's doing misdeeds through or for Kama. So like doing bad things for the sake of getting sense pleasure. And one of the most important things for this is when sexual relations and how that relates to your partner or what have you, because it's a very sensitive thing for sentient beings. So if you have you're in a relationship with someone that involves a lot of trust, and if you break that trust, that's a very deep hurt that you do to people. And so that's why we take that as one of the 5 precepts, because it's a very important and it's a dangerous thing that we engage in. So we have to engage in it carefully. And so if we break that precept, according to the Jataka tales, this is the kind of place that we can end up going to. The Simbalivana. And we have after the Simbalivana, Ovini, why don't you read what happens next?
Oh, okay. Next to what happens, next to this is what appears to be delightful mango grove. Moved by desire for the mangoes, the being enters only to find himself in the Asipatavana, the forest of swords. Here the bear swords like leaves which move in the wind and cut off his hands and feet, his ears and nose. Once again, he endures great suffering.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's pretty nasty. The Forest of Swords. This is also, most of these are mentioned across different Buddhist traditions. I want to point out, so the Forest of Swords is mentioned in a lot of Tibetan texts as well. One of the reflections that many Tibetan practitioners will do is often daily recite all the different hells that they have in their system. They have the systematic, here are all the different kinds of hells there are, and they will go through it and they will contemplate and think about all these various nirayas and what it's like to experience them. The point of this, of course, being so that they go, hey, if I do misdeeds, that's the direction I'm going to go in. So I don't want to, behave in such a way as to end up there. So, for example, they often reflect also on the deeds that send you there. So when they think of the Peta realms, this is one thing that I did every day for several years. I was doing these Tibetan practices, and every day you think of the Peta realms, and you think, oh, what sends beings to the Peta realms? Oh, it's miserliness, it's close-fistedness, it's the lack of generosity. So you should practice generosity while alive. Those kind of things. And then when it comes to the Nirayas, you're supposed to reflect what sends beings to these realms. It's hatred and anger and ill will. So let's avoid those feelings while alive so that we don't send ourselves there. So those kind of reflections are very common, and a lot of these nirayas are repeated across various Buddhist traditions. There's also the next one, the Karodaka Nadi. Let's see. Naomi, why don't you read that one?
Okay. At last he comes to the Karodaka Nadi, the caustic river. There he is pulled about helplessly by the current, enduring great suffering until he is fished out with a hook by the Niryapalas. They ask him if he is hungry, then force open his mouth with iron tongs and feed him a red-hot iron ball. Then they ask if he is thirsty, and they pour molten copper down his throat. These hot substances burn right through his body, coming out below and taking his intestines with them. Finally, having had their sport, the Niryapalas throw the hapless sufferer back into the Mahāniraya.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then you go right back around. You go in a big loop. You start back again at the top. So it's like it's like the world's worst roller coaster, right? You just do it over and over and over again for however long your actions determine that you would remain in Niraya. This list of sort of sub-nirayas expands and changes over time. Like I said, a lot of them are in common with other Buddhist traditions, but in other places we see more added to this list or changes made. They also have a lot in common with other non-Buddhist descriptions of hell. We see they have a lot in common with Hindu ideas about hell, which predate Buddhism as far as we can tell. So the Buddha was not the first person to discuss these places, these destinations. And of course, Christian ideas of hell are very similar, and same in Islam and other religions. So there are two conclusions. Well, probably there's more than two conclusions, but two obvious conclusions that we can draw from that. One is that these places are that the descriptions that we find in Buddhism are culturally derived. That these things, these places of torment in the afterlife, were part of the culture because they're part of many superstitious ancient cultures, and therefore, they were just incorporated into the Buddhist worldview. We've definitely seen a lot of things like that already in our exploration, like the idea of Mount Meru. We've already mentioned Mount Meru does not literally exist. It wouldn't make any sense. It would be so big that it would engulf the entire Earth and reach past the moon. And many of these features of the classical Buddhist idea of the cosmos are not literally true. We know that's the case, and they were just adopted from the existing culture. And some of these are right back in the early suttas. So we're pretty certain that the Buddha talked, for example, about Mount Meru as an illustrative example of a point. It's something so big, it would be bigger than Mount Meru, or something that would take so long, it would take longer than Mount Meru to wear down, or something like that. So these features of the cosmos were already there in pre-Buddhist India. So the Buddha himself didn't invent them, but he discussed them. So there's a question of how much we can say, well, does this mean that the Buddha just inherited these kind of cosmological assumptions and didn't challenge them? Perhaps he did that. I think many people in the West these days believe that we don't have to worry too much about these kind of cosmological things, like, which hells are real? Are there hells? Does that literally exist or not? Is there Mount Meru or not? Maybe we and so many people in the West today say, these probably are just cultural artifacts. We don't have to worry about them or take them literally. We can interpret them metaphorically as well, which I think is fine. That's totally okay. Another possibility is that all the different religions are right. That in this case could be true, at least from the perspective of Buddhism. The idea that beings of other practitioners of other religions have legitimate insight into other realms is completely canonical. Like in the Buddhist text, it asserts that other non-Buddhist meditators can remember previous lives, they can see the Deva realms, all these things. That's not strictly exclusively Buddhist. So if you take the Buddhist perspective, it's possible that the Christian hell, for example, may really exist. It's just that the Christians don't fully understand it. That would be the kind of more orthodox, old school Buddhist approach to understanding it. So if you ask the question, why are these visions of hell and heaven and so on so similar between religions? The classical Buddhist answer would probably be because there are legitimate insights that other religious practitioners have. There really is, like saints and sages can really see these things, but maybe Hindus or Christians or whatever, they don't have enough insight to see this hell is terrible, but it doesn't last forever. Or this God is great, but he also doesn't last forever, and he's not all powerful, and those kinds of things. So that's probably the more classical interpretation. And the more, I guess, revisionist or modernist interpretation might be that these things aren't literally true, and they don't have to be literally true. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you believe. It doesn't really matter to me, as long as you can derive some value from it. That's what's important. Okay, we're also going to talk about Avīci, since we have a little bit more time. Avīci is another Niraya. So on the next page, let's see, I will read this first paragraph. It's quite long, and I'll give you guys a break. So the description of Mahāniraya and its environs from the Majjhima Nikaya given above may well represent the original conception of Niraya. So that's probably the older idea of what Niraya was. It was greatly elaborated in the commentaries, and the number of different Nirayas multiplied. As we noted above, there came to be 8 Mahānirayas. To distinguish the deepest, hottest, and most horrible and greatest of these, the name Avīci, or sometimes Avīci Mahāniraya, came to be used. The name Avīci means without respite. Respite means rest or break. You don't get any breaks. It is almost never met with in the Sutta Pitaka. So in the oldest layer of texts, Avīci is not mentioned really, maybe once or twice. In 2 parallel passages from describing the conditions on Earth in the cosmological past and future, the population is said to be Avīci manye poto bhavisati, in which someone else translates as, one would think that there was no space between people. So Avīci means a space or a break or a gap. So this is the original meaning of Avīci. So it's just that all these terrible hell experiences are packed very closely in Avīci. The one very clear reference to Avīci as a Niraya in the old text is found as describing it as four-doored and terrible, which is very ominous and mysterious. Yeah, so it's possibly a kind of Niraya or a specific Niraya, and it shows up a lot in later tradition, but it's only mentioned vaguely once in the original canon, in the really old layers of text. Okay, Seth, why don't you tell us why it's called Avīci in the next paragraph?
Avīci is so named because it is without respite or interruption in 4 ways. The beings there suffer continuously from burning without any relief. The flames shooting from wall to wall and from floor to ceiling fill the entire space without a gap. The beings there are packed in like grains of flour, filling the entire 100 yojana space so that the beings cannot find room in any posture and are constantly injuring one another. Finally, just as one drop of molten copper on the tongue renders 6 drops of honey negligible, so does one moment of intense pain cancel out 6 neutral moments, thus making the experience of the pain here perceived as continuous. The last point is no doubt intended to reconcile the description of Avīci with the Abhidhamma theory, which requires some mutual mind moments in the mental continuum.
All right, yeah. So because we're getting here into like commentarial literature, which is like later than the suttas, there's this idea, and this is unique to Theravada. It's not really shared in other traditions or emphasized as much, is that your mind is like it's like a movie. It's like playing at a frame rate, like those. So consciousness has all these frames flicking by, right? And the idea is that each one of these flickering moments is different from the previous one. And so it can't be, so according to that theory, there's not a continuous, like, this is nice, this is nice, this is nice, this is bad. It like flips back and forth. Like it's pleasure, pain, neutrality, flicking back and forth all the time. So that's a specific to the Abhidhamma. It's not like an old, really old layer theory. It's like a later kind of philosophical idea in Buddhism. And so this was kind of glued into or stapled into the idea of Avīci, is that, you know, there is gap in the pain, but beings don't notice it because they're so overwhelmed or something like that. Okay. Yeah, we have time to read about the dimensions of Avīci. Dilaka, why don't you read that?
Sure. The whole paragraph?
Yeah, it's kind of long, isn't it? Just read up to the lowest point in the cosmos.
Lowest point. Okay.
Yeah.
I cannot find that. Oh, there you go. It is often cited as the lowest point.
Yeah, so go up to there.
Got it. The dimensions of Avīci are either 10,000 yojana square or 100. And it may be inferred from the story of Devadatta's torment that it is 100 yojana from top to bottom. If this doesn't simply represent two divergent traditions, the discrepancy may mean that Avīci proper is 100 yojana iron-walled cube and that all the surrounding subsidiary nirayas cover 10,000 yojanas.
Yeah, and it is often said as the lowest point in the cosmos. So it's like the opposite of the highest point in the Brahma world. So this is, in the traditional cosmology, this is taken literally. Like it is the lowest, like physically it is placed down low because the world is conceived of as this stratified, layered, flat plane. And at the bottom of this, or like a lasagna, and at the bottom of the lasagna is this really awful Avīci, and at the top you have the Brahma worlds. And somewhere in the upper middle part of the lasagna is like human existence. But in metaphorical terms, it's the lowest point in the sense that it is the lowest emotional experience that a being could have. It is the most negative experience that is conceivable in samsara. We see here, it's interestingly that this is a conjecture by the author, but he's saying that maybe based on these like measurements, it's supposed to be like a box, like an actual big iron box that beings are, like a huge one, the beings are stuck in, which is kind of weird, but definitely terrifying. And we see different we see that different texts have different traditions place it in different places. So at the very end of this paragraph, it mentions that the Mahāyana source, the Abhidharmakosha, says that it gives a specific distance. So it states that it's specifically below our feet. So it does literally, so the Abhidharmakosha says it's literally down there and gives a specific distance. Of course, again, that's like if say like hellish experiences really exist, that's probably not literally true. It doesn't make any sense. If you go 20,000 yojana under our feet, there's nothing there. It's just empty space. So, and that what's down there is always moving all the time. So it doesn't make any sense from a literal perspective. Okay, and should we, yeah, I think we have maybe, oh yeah, that's actually pretty good. Let's skip the next paragraph. And Ovindu, why don't you read the one after? There's an idiomatic phrase.
Sure. There is an idiomatic phrase in Pali equivalent to the English "when hell freezes over." When something is improbable to the point of impossibility, it is said to be as likely as when Avīci is as cool as a water lily grove. Nevertheless, rare occasions are recorded when the fires of Avīci were indeed mitigated. The fires of Avīci going out is one of the wonders attending the birth of the Buddha to be. Also, at one time, Mahākassapa visited Avīci, created a circle of coolness, and sat on a lotus preaching to the inhabitants.
Okay, yeah. So this is that's actually in the Anguttara Nikaya. So that's in the suttas itself. That legend about Mahākassapa descending down to teach the beings in Avīci. Which is, I mean, that's quite wonderful, actually. There's a similar tradition about Padmasambhava in the Tibetan tradition, where he has a quick, brief tour through one of the Niraya realms, and he manages to cool it momentarily. But then eventually the fires come back, and he explains, he's like, there's nothing I can do in the long run. This is the actions of beings put them in Niraya. But, while I'm here, maybe there's a bit I can do to make it a bit better, for them. And so that, I mean, that's quite wonderful. I mean, if it's literally true or if it's just poetic, I think it's still beautiful. The idea that, for a moment when great beings are born or when they exercise their compassion, that the fires of hell go out for a while. I think that's quite beautiful. And I think we should all aspire to do that. I think that should be inspiring for us, is just to think, hey, maybe we can, for the beings who are suffering, hellish experiences in this world, maybe we can help alleviate that. Maybe we can help put out those fires for other people. I think that's one great lesson we can take from this. Okay, that's pretty good. I think we will probably stop there. I think we've done enough of a tour of Niraya, and I think we'll leave it there. There's plenty more, obviously, but I think we get the picture. Does anybody have any immediate comments or questions? If you don't, that's okay. We can always talk more.
I got some questions, but it'd be better if I asked during the question session. But
okay, they're kind of meatier questions.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get into it then.
Yeah, we got something to fill up the time during the questions, right?
Oh yeah, that's good. That's great. Okay, yeah, I can bring it up then. In that case, we'll take a 10-minute break. Come back at 3:10, and then we'll answer questions. We'll chat. We'll do a short meditation too. All right, see you on 10. Okay, everyone, let me know when you're back.
We're back.
Okay, great. Looks like almost everybody. As soon as Delia goes back, we'll do a little bit of a short meditation. Give you 10 minutes. No sign of Dilika? That's okay. We'll start anyway. You can join in when he gets back. All right. Take a seat, however you normally like to, whatever your normal meditation posture is. For me, that's Burmese posture. So I like to put my my calves parallel, so my feet are both my ankles are on the floor like this, and I put a little just like a chair cushion under my spine, and I find that's perfect. That's just right. I can sit like that for ages and ages. But you know, experiment a little bit and find a posture that's good for yourself. And straighten up, relax your whole body. And you know at this point how you meditate best, so practice whatever you like for about 10 minutes. Okay, and you could make a little dedication or aspiration after the meditation if you like. Try and think in your heart what you want your meditation to progress towards, and what you hope it accomplishes. I mean, the obvious choice is that is to aspire to achieve nibbana as soon as possible. You can also hope that you can dedicate the merit of it to benefiting other beings. You can hope that the fires of hell will cool for sentient beings. You can make that wish. You can make the wish not to attain nibbana as quickly as possible, but as thoroughly as possible. If you wanted, you could make the wish, may I one day become a Samma Sambuddha. You can make that wish too. That's a popular one. Or even just, may I get through this week, get through this month. May I have prosperity and success over this next year, or what have you. Whatever your aspiration is, you can meditate with that in mind. Okay, good. So what else do we want to talk about? I remember, Devika, you had a question. I think I can guess what it probably is, but maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, the question was, I was wondering what the capacity of the Niraya was, like how many people can store and like at a time and so forth.
Okay, that's a really good question. That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to ask about the Niraya Palas, because it's similar to some questions that people have asked before. The hell guards, because they're in this weird, ambiguous position. And I was going to say the textbook addresses this, and I was going to give you a page number, which I may still do. I was ready for that question because people like to ask these. But no, that's a great question. The capacity of Niraya. I don't think it is addressed, and I don't think it can be, because it's the number of beings are generally considered to be uncountable. I think we discussed this really early on. I believe we discussed this idea, the number, like the scale of samsara in terms of time, it can't be reckoned to have a beginning, but also in terms of the number of beings, they can't be counted, right? And that's what the suttas say. So the commentaries imply that they infer from that implication that there are an infinite number of beings, and that samsara is infinite in time. So if that is the case, then Niraya can't have a capacity. This is a deal with infinity, right? Just like the human realm also can't have a capacity. No, because if there are an infinite number of beings and they're divided into, say, 5 categories, 5 buckets or whatever, it doesn't matter how, like, each bucket must also be infinitely big in order to contain infinite beings. So if that is the case, if the commentaries are correct, that the beings are limitless without number, then Niraya cannot have a final capacity, which is also at odds with what the commentaries say about the size of some of these places, like in Avīci. I don't think the sub-hells and all the other kind of hells are really addressed. Like, Avīci maybe, because it has this, say, like the commentaries say Avīci's got the specific dimensions to it. So obviously, theoretically, there's a limit to how many beings you could cram in there, assuming they have a certain size, right? And we're not entirely sure. The commentaries and the sutta seem to suggest that that hell beings have similar dimensions to humans, that they're kind of human-ish, sort of humanoid critters. So they would have, like probably, they'd have human-sized proportions. But yeah, so if Avīci probably is the way the commentaries say, it would have a limit. But then there are all these other Nirayas. So maybe you could have only a certain number of beings in Avīci at any given time, but all the other Nirayas. And the Tibetan commentaries and things like that add all kinds of other weird stuff. Like they have these in-between hells where you're sort of like stuck. They're considered a kind of Niraya, but they're not like, fire and brimstone. Like, for example, just being trapped in an everyday object is one that's considered a kind of Niraya in their tradition. So they say, like, some beings, when they commit certain kinds of misdeeds, end up being stuck in a piece of rope, or like in a bowl, or like a spoon or something, and you're just like trapped in this weird everyday object, and that's your torment, is that you're confined in this small uncomfortable space, and then people just like carry you around and use you, and you can't get them to help you because you can't communicate with them. So there are all these weird kind of possibilities out there, and I wouldn't say that I wouldn't myself say like, yeah, definitely just the one tradition's got it right. I think all these other ones are also very interesting. If any of it's true, probably more than just one tradition's worth of ideas are true. But yeah, so I would say because of the, but just strictly based on the problem of infinity, there can't be a theoretical capacity.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering because it did say in the text like it was like a 4 iron, like four shaped iron kind of thing. Like
yeah, like it has a specific shape and dimension, right? Like it's this big. It's got these doors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like an object, and if it's an object, then it has a certain amount of space that it takes up, and so you can't put an infinite number of beings into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. That's impossible. I think it mainly describes Avīci as being that way. I don't know if Mahāniraya is described specifically in terms of its like its capacity, but there are also a variety of other nirayas that we haven't looked at, and so conceivably these other nirayas, like they proliferate and are many and many and many, and you could just end up in one of these other little corners of the infinitude of them. But yeah, in the way it would work is that because if the commentaries are right and there's infinite beings, right? This is a fun math problem. The suttas say that there are fewer beings as you go up the ladder, right? So the fewest beings in the Brahma world, the most in the Niraya realm, right? So if that is the case, there are still infinite beings in each one. It's just a smaller infinity, right? So there are an infinite number of Brahmas, but there are infinitely more petas, and infinitely more hell beings down below them, and so on. So that would be the way it would have to work out for it all to be consistent. And given that, there would have to be an infinite amount of space. So if each specific niraya had finite dimensions, there would have to be an infinite number of them in order for that to be in order to contain all those beings.
That's perfect. Thanks for the answer, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess now you can just do all the math. Actually, the Jains were very good at this because they were very nitpicky about the numbers in ancient India. They pioneered all kinds of different concepts of infinity because of their religion. Yeah, they have similar kind of structures and things, and they thought a lot about the details and the nitty gritty. The Jains like to pick about rules, I think, even more than Buddhists do, and we definitely do a lot. So I think they ended up developing these very sophisticated mathematical ideas about infinities and so on because of their grappling with similar questions. So that's an interesting kind of mathematical and historical topic you could explore if you're very, very academically inclined. I have looked into it really briefly, and it seems like an interesting subject. But I don't know, what else? Any other questions, or how you feeling? Anything going on that you, I don't know, want some advice about, or just want to vent? I don't know, being all locked up inside.
Mike, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, because the hell beings, they can like endure torment, and in one place it says they get cut up into very small pieces. How do they like regenerate to endure more suffering?
Yeah, it seems to be the case that, like, for example, if they're cut up into pieces, that those pieces sort of like reassemble themselves, that they get just globbed back together. And the consciousness of those beings, I'm not sure what happens to it while they're in that state of like being all chopped up and stuff. I don't really know. But there is a passage in the textbook that actually deals with the question of the sort of, I don't know if it's necessarily a paradox, but the difficulty of these beings being chopped up and tormented and basically killed and tortured in so many ways, and yet not perishing. And it's almost like I think the best way to consider it is being like a nightmare. But where did it go? Oh yeah. On page 333, It's the only paragraph on page 333. It talks about this question, where you have all these different kinds of monsters and things that attack these beings, these poor beings, and yeah, it mentions that it's obviously very crowded. All the beings are packed together, and they're being attacked by monsters and things all the time. It is often stated that in spite of being torn open, burned, devoured by animals, or otherwise horribly damaged, the Niraya beings are unable to die until their negative karma is exhausted. Their bodies are continually restored to suffer again and again. And that's from the suttas themselves. So it's not really clear how they're restored, but perhaps they are re-glued together, or perhaps they black out, and when they come to, they have a new body. I think a lot of as you go further up and down the ladder of samsara, the imagery becomes more and more dreamlike. I think in terms of like the nature of the experience becomes more and more surreal, and I think that's also true as you go up into the deva realms. It's like it's like you're having a really nice dream for a very long time, and the devas like still have bodies, for example, but they're not quite like our bodies. They're kind of softer, more subtle bodies, just like your dream body, right, is similar. Like in a dream, you can put your finger through your hand, but you can also feel things. Like you still have touch, but you can mess with it in certain ways that you can't do while you're awake, right? Like you could put your hand through a wall, or you could fly. You can make yourself lighter than air. But if someone, say, slapped you in a dream, you could still feel it. Or if you pinch yourself, you can feel it, right? Most people can't. So I think it's similar to that in that sense. I've certainly had dreams where I've had very painful experiences. Like I've had dreams where I die in the dream, and yet I don't lose consciousness. So I don't know if you've ever had that. Most people say I think it's kind of an old myth that if you can't die in the dream, that if you die, you just wake up. That's not true, because I've definitely had dreams where I die, and then I still am just kind of like there. And my body's definitely dead, and it's like, it's wounded or something, and I get sick and die in the dream, but then I still experience things. And so maybe it's a bit like that. That might be another way to think of it. It's like, yeah, I'm still experiencing stuff, but the body is useless and it's just lying there. And then maybe eventually just, for the hell being, maybe it just gets back up again, and just starts, and then now you go through the round again. So possibly something like that. I think, yeah, the important thing to bear in mind is that basically it's not, the laws of physics are not constant across samsara. I guess I'd put it that way. So like in the human world, there's a certain order of physics and so on where the rules apply, like this, that, and the other thing, gravitational constant is that, and this governs this other motion or whatever. But in the other realms or other layers, it doesn't necessarily work the same way. But the rules of karma are constant across it. So that might be an interesting way to frame it or think about
it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so that's, I think, also true of the I think maybe it's also true of like the animal realm. Animals sort of behave somewhat like they're in a dream sometimes, in that they'll engage in repetitive behaviors out of habit, but they don't really know why they're doing it. And even if like I've seen, like my cat today, she did this weird thing where we've been trying to reward her for scratching her post and not the furniture. So we give her a treat if she scratches the right thing. And now she'll sometimes just go sit by that object and kind of be confused. Like, I'm supposed to be here because I think I'm going to get a treat, but I don't know what it means exactly. Like, she's not put it all together. So it's kind of like this foggy, dreamlike state where she hasn't figured out all the pieces and how they fit together. Yeah. And we're in that state too, really. Ultimately, in the final analysis, all sentient beings are like that, in this strange dream of samsara. And that's why we often talk about enlightenment as being awakening. We wake up from the dream, and then we may still experience it, but we don't believe it.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. I don't know. Any other questions about meditation or the realms or I don't know, anything that's going on in your lives?
Like I remember last week, Dilkaya, he asked if when Devadatta hit the rock on the Buddha's head, the Buddha felt pain and why. And then I asked my brother that question, and he said that he read in the Jataka that the Buddha and his friend, they're like at a river or like a fish, and then the fish was like out of the water, and then they like put the fish back in the water, but while they were doing that they were laughing or something like that. And because of that, the Buddha always had a little headache. So do you think that might be why the Buddha received pain too?
Oh, do you think that Jataka tale was like connected to the injury that he received?
Yeah.
Could be. I don't know if it's explicit in the Jataka. Sometimes the Jataka says, and this is why, this other thing happened later on. I know the Jataka story you're talking about. I don't remember if it mentions the wound inflicted by Devadatta. It'd be worth looking into. I don't recall though, but yeah, I remember the story you're talking about where he's born as a fisherman into this village of fisher people, fisher folk, and then he's sort of callous about the fish this one time. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. There are some other things though that would be that are important to bear in mind. One thing that is that we often tend to think of the Buddha in very obviously grandiose terms. We think of him as Buddhists have a tendency to almost deify the Buddha or maybe go beyond deifying the Buddha, because obviously we view the Buddha as being wiser than the gods, which he is. But at the same time, the body of the Buddha that we see and talk to and hear things from is a human body. And that body is limited and also impermanent. And I think there are some interesting hints of that in the canon, and it can be interesting to reflect on these sometimes. For example, we don't often think about what color his eyes were. He was like us in that sense. He did something that we can do too. What color were the Buddha's eyes? And the stories say that he had blue eyes. It's just an interesting thought to remember. Or that he had back pain most of his life. He had pain in his back. And there's actually one sutta where he stops halfway through. This is later in his life. And he just can't. It's just too bad. He's like, I gotta stretch. I can't. This is too much. And he asks one of his disciples to take over and finish the discussion, because he is just in too much pain. And that's not from an injury or anything. It's just, his body's breaking down, just like all of us do. And some of us are going to get it in our knees, in our elbows, in our back, whatever. Eventually we'll experience such pain. And I don't know if it always has to come down to something specific. I think it could just be that's the way the body is. And it reminds me of a discourse that the Buddha gave about sickness. And someone came to ask him, is sickness always a result of karma? What sicknesses come from what karma? And he emphasized that sometimes you just get sick. It's not always a result of your actions. Sometimes you get sick because of the weather or your body or pestilence and all these things. It's not always your fault specifically. So it's important to remember, I think, that not all experiences, I think that the important part is that sometimes we'll experience pain, and it's not a result of our karma. Whether or not we suffer from it, that's a question of our own actions. So pain itself isn't always suffering, and we can experience pain in many ways and just be okay with it, and just be like, oh, this is just where I'm at in my life, and this is inevitable part of being alive. And suffering doesn't have to come with it. And I think the obvious example that demonstrates that is the Buddha himself. in his old age experienced pain, but he was obviously beyond suffering at that point. He had been enlightened for many, many years, many decades. So I think that's an important lesson to take to heart too. Maybe there was some karmic reason why he had to experience back pain, or he had to experience headaches. But maybe it's just that's the way his body was, and that's when it decayed and finally dissolved. That's just the path it went down. Yeah, so it can be a bit of both. It can be a mix of just the way the world works and your past karma. But I think the key issue is if you're going to suffer for it, that will be because of your actions. But sometimes things just go away.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think that's important to remember, because a lot of the time people can be like keeping count, especially like the Western understanding, this kind of karma, you know, people have imported it and kind of misunderstood it, and they think it's this like cosmic tallying system, like, oh, if you do a good thing, then you're gonna get 3 years of good fortune and then blah blah blah. It's not quite like that. It's not like this, you know, accounting system where there's somebody with a ledger, and it's more like your actions condition habits of suffering or non-suffering. And the important point, enlightenment is not about experiencing a painless existence. It's about experiencing without suffering, and that can be with pleasure or pain. It doesn't matter.
Mike, going back to Ovidinangi's question about Devadatta, why and when he struck the Buddha with the rock.
Yeah,
I did some research while you guys were discussing, and not the best and official website, but I found a website, ancientbuddhist.com or something. It said to the reason why he endured that pain was because in a previous life, he and his brother and his father, the father had passed away, and the brother and the Buddha in his previous life, they didn't really like each other really well. And then in the end, the Buddha threw a rock and killed the brother in the previous life.
Okay, yeah. Does it refer to a specific Jataka story? Because that would be very interesting to read.
Sorry, let me just take a look at it again. I'm afraid not. It's just like a little text.
Maybe worth looking up, because if that is a real Jataka tale, which it could be, there are definitely Jataka stories where the Bodhisattva does things that are not great.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I could believe that. That sounds. I don't think I've heard that one, but I might be worth looking into. Yeah, there's a few cases where he does stuff that is reprehensible, including one of the latter ones, one of the late Jatakas, where I think he meets a monk or I might have been. I think it's in one of his later lives toward the end, his friend encourages him to go and meet the Buddha at that time. Not Gautama Buddha, but the one of that era. He says, hey, there's a Buddha in the world. Let's go meet him. And then he's like, nah, that sounds dumb. You know, he disparages the Buddha and he disparages Buddhism. He's like, that seems silly. But his friend like literally drags him there. He's like, nah, come on, this is really important. So he physically forces him to go there. And then he's like, yeah, okay, you know what? I changed my mind. He was so impressed by the Buddha that he changed his mind, and he became a monk and he practiced. But it's interesting because, you know, even at that point in his development, he didn't have the karma to think, yeah, Buddhism, that sounds great, let's do it. He was still kind of resistant to it, even that late on. So I think it's very interesting, these Jataka stories. They do show that it's like a very gradual process. He's not always coming across as this perfect heroic person in every one of them. And I think that's really great because, you know, we're also struggling all the time. See if you can find what Jataka story that comes from, if there's a reference to it. I'll also look into it if I can.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. But yeah, obviously I believe you more than any of the websites that was there. So that's why.
Yeah, like I said, I've not heard of it, but that doesn't mean it's not true. My knowledge of the Jataka stories is not encyclopedic. I've not read them all, so.
Got it. I'll give it a check.
Yeah. And there are also more, just for everybody's reference, like there's a list of Jataka stories in the Theravada canon, but the other traditions have other Jatakas too. So it's like a mix. Like there's not like a fixed list of like, these are Jatakas and that's it. So there's not like one authority on which Jatakas are legit or not. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Thoughts about the Jataka stories or anything like that? Meanwhile, I'll see if I can find it. I don't see. I'm looking now for this Jataka story where the Bodhisattva throws a rock. I'm not seeing anything right away.
Mike, I actually got a quick question.
Yeah.
So, like, there's lives before the before a bodhisattva life. So, like, in the time of the bodhisattva, like the Buddha, or like all Buddhas, is it like a certain time, like 20 years or like 100 years that they're in the bodhisattva life, or can it just be as much, and then yeah, like when they're ready, they become Buddha?
Oh, like in their final life.
Yeah.
Okay, so like in their final life, how long does it take them to go from being their bodhisattva in their last life to being a Buddha?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. It's different for each one. According to the tradition, Gautama Buddha, like the one that we now remember and we have our teachings from, it took him about 6 years ish from when he left home. He was probably about just under through like 28 or 29. It's my age. And then when he left and he became a monk, kind of. There was no monastic order, obviously. But they were just like wandering samanas. And it took him about 6 years of that. And he tried all kinds of different methods, and then he eventually figured out one that worked. But Kassapa Buddha, before him, he apparently only took 7 days, according to the traditions. He went forth and he just meditated, he practiced for 7 days, and he got it. So he had a much easier time. So it seems to vary a lot, and it's all kinds of, if you go back, I think, and look at the stories for each one of these Buddhas, it's different for all of them. There's not much I think in the suttas not much detail about these previous Buddhas. Gautama Buddha mentions them kind of obliquely or vaguely. He says that he's the inheritor of this tradition of all these other Buddhas who come before him. There are 1 or 2 passages in there that are attributed to previous Buddhas, actually. There's one pretty famous one that's attributed to Kassapa Buddha, which is pretty crazy because he's long gone, right? He may have been in a previous world system so long ago, like an entire universe ago. But that passage talks about meat and whether someone should eat meat, and Kassapa Buddha said it doesn't matter, basically. But that's only attributed to him. Like the passage doesn't have his name in it. It's just people, like later commentators said this apparently was relayed by Gautama Buddha as being Kassapa Buddha's words or something like that. But yeah, so it's different, and also there's not a lot of detail on it. I think that a lot of what happened later was they get legend, like they maybe were a concept and then a name, and then there's a legend glued onto the name. We don't have much detail. Like we don't know what kinds of meditation they practice. Like we know that Gautama Buddha, his main practice was mindfulness of breathing, but we don't know what those previous Buddhas were practicing, what kind of meditation they liked to do. Maybe it was the same, but we have no idea. It's just not given in any amount of detail. But yeah, the amount of time that they took to achieve awakening seems to be very, very different depending on the individual and their actions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's a really interesting question. I've always wondered, like, oh well, it would be interesting to know more about these previous Buddhas, but I think that because it's so long ago, if it were possible to find out that kind of information, I think there'd be no way to. It would be gone now. But it's a very interesting question. They're also described, interestingly, as just like a fun fact, if you're thinking, if you still are just pondering stuff. They're also described as being of different heights, like very different proportions. Like I think previous Buddhas are described as being very, very tall in comparison to people these days. Like I think Kassapa Buddha was supposed to be something like 20 feet tall or 9 feet tall. They're very, very tall. And a lot of that, which I think is, obviously a little bit difficult for modern people to believe. There's physical limits about the human shape that can't go that big, but he's listed as, I think there might be a table here. I think I one time did see like a list of all the different kind of features of them, like how long they took to achieve awakening, and how they oh yeah, and what incarnation Gautama Buddha was in when he met them, and all those kind of details. I think there was a list of them someplace that I saw. If I can find it, I will relay it to you because it's kind of interesting. On this page, on this Wikipedia page, they do have a list of all of them and the incarnation, of course, the birth. Put that in the chat. They have the list of the birth, at least. It's not all the information I was looking for, but the incarnation of Gautama. They also have a list of like the different kinds of trees that they sat under. According to the legend, each bodhisattva sits under a tree, but it's a different kind of tree. If they depending on the Buddha, and also they list their castes that they came from, and we see that they're all coming from the upper two castes, the Khatriyas and the Brahmanas.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And of course, these lists are not, exhaustive and everything. There are other. First of all, if time is beginningless, then there must have been Buddhas before Dipankara and so on, and we just don't have lists. And also, Mahayana traditions say that there are also more than they have other lists and things like that. So those are also worth looking into and might be interesting reading. Okay. I think I see people have returned from their breakout room and from the junior class. I think we're mostly back here now. I think we can turn things over to Bhante Chandima if he's here. I see him in the call. There we go.
How are you?
Good. I think yeah, I think that went pretty well.
How was the breakout room thing? It went well?
Yes, it went.
Oh, great. Okay, so we're gonna recite the Chattamanoka Gatha. These are three stanzas. So they were given by the Buddha to someone on his way to some place. Okay. So it's better to rise and then recite the stanzas. Yeah. Romano Jesu Sankhya Muni Bhagava Kata Kinchu Parakato Bhagaviri Samangi Tang Sugatam Sar Natamapi Viragama Nijama Swaka Dhamma Sangha Mampati Konam Madhurami Nang Suvit Bhante Dhamme Samsara Nante Mukhi Teche Dine Mahapale Chatusu Sukhisu Purese Yoginesu Teche Dhamme Tasasi Sangami Sare Nante Mukhi. Okay, Mike, the next academic day is going to be February 14th. Huh?
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess it'll be Valentine's Day. Yeah.
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Anything about Buddhism for Valentine's?
I don't know that we don't have a specifically Valentine's themed lesson. I didn't plan it that way. We're going to talk, actually, I just looked at the schedule again. We're going to talk about asuras next time and how they fit into the Buddhist cosmology.
Valentine's Day? I don't think. Asuras never fit into Valentine's.
They have no connection to Valentine's Day, not to my knowledge. We could make one. We could make our own Valentine's Day tradition that has something to do with asuras, but I don't know. Yeah, there's no existing connection.
Okay. Okay, Mike. Okay, children, I hope that you learned today. And yeah, a new month is coming up, right? February. Yeah. Okay.
It's so the shortest month, which maybe this year would be cause for celebration.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike and Hamaduni.
Yeah, everyone.
Thank you, Hamaduni. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.